Saturday here on the North Shore Drive podcast. You know what that means. It's time for the Acrisure Fan Advantage here from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We've got a returning guest, Irie Harris. He covers the Browns for Cleveland.com. We'll get all the insight on the madness that has been this week for the Cleveland Browns as they get ready to take on the Steelers at 1 p.m. Sunday. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, is he ready? They're really testing out Joe Flacco? You get all that insight here on the Acrisure Fan Advantage, brought to you by the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Let's get into it.
You are now listening to the North Shore Drive podcast, a show on all things Pittsburgh sports from the writers of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, hosted by Christopher Carter.
Hello and welcome to the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm your host, Chris Carter. As always, you can find the show every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and the day before the Steelers game, just like this episode, coming to you because of the Acrisure Fan Advantage, where the Fan Advantage brings you closer to the Steelers than ever before. Every Friday, we answer your burning questions with our Steelers insider, Brian Betko. Then we have every day before the game, an in-depth conversation with an opponent expert. We have our returning guest who covers the Browns for Cleveland.com, Irie Harris. He broke down the Steelers Browns when they faced earlier this season. But now, Irie, things have gotten a bit crazier because, and it was so funny. If you guys want to go back and see a live reaction to the Deshaun Watson news, Ray Fittipaldo and I were recording the Wednesday episode for this show on Tuesday morning, and we're just talking through a normal thing. And at one point, if you look close enough, you'll see my eyes go like, oh. And then I have to tell Ray, like, when he finishes his point, I'm like, so Ray, we got to switch the whole show around because Deshaun Watson's now out for the year. No one saw that coming. And it was just a shock. It was a shock here in Pittsburgh. Irie, I have to imagine this has been a huge shock in Cleveland and a scramble to find answers. Dorian Thompson-Robinson named the starter over P.J. Walker, who had kind of taken that role on. And we're now seeing reports that Joe Flacco is being tested out by the Browns. Can you break down to us what exactly is going on?
Chris, first off, let me just say thank you for the lovely intro. It's always good to hear my name said in that fashion. Second off, might I say nobody knows anything. Even those that have those sources and report what they know, what they do, nobody knows what's going on. But that's just kind of the Cleveland Brown way it seems. There's never a dull moment with this team. But yes, there has been a lot of movement within the quarterback depth chart. Wednesday morning was the bombshell and quite the turn of emotions from Watson's heroic performance in the second half. In Baltimore Sunday, a good 3 business days later, he's out for the season. The sudden, the bone within his right shoulder was found, and they don't want to, damage it anymore. So now they are scrambling. Some will question, why are they not starting P.J. Walker Sunday versus Pittsburgh? I have thought about this myself and kind of wondered why. And this is the conclusion I've come to. Walker was the best option they felt before Watson returned. As we saw during October. He started 3 games, delivered 2 wins. You can argue it should have been 3 had they gone for a run on that 3rd and 3 instead of it being a pass, which then led to Jamal Adams with the lovely Stalker-esque play, but I digress. Regarding now, they're thinking, who is the best option for the remainder of the season? Watson's not coming back. What do we do? And so now they're just looking to see and test out who they have and what they can do. And honestly, even with DTR starting on Sunday, their draft pick from earlier this year, somebody that they're trying to make kind of a Watson protege, somebody that they spoke a lot more about his legs than arms when they first drafted him. Even with all of that occurring and going on, who's to say within their game plan that they're not going to use multiple quarterbacks in some of these games? That's the way that this offense just pops out sometimes. Even within the last game, Dorian Thompson-Robinson went out P.J. Walker for a quick snap versus Baltimore. And when Alex Van Pelt was asked about that, it's the same, was there a reason for having him out there in the game? And he said, well, yeah, it was just part of the game plan. So I'm not thinking they're going to go out with one quarterback for the entire stretch. I'm thinking they're going to test out everybody and see what they can do. And that includes Joe Flacco, as we know.
Yeah, that's a crazy situation. It seems a lot to put on a 5th-round draft pick rookie to start against a team that is leading the NFL in turnover margin this week, as far as what we're seeing from what the Browns. And again, this is a Browns team that we talked about that game. I said the difference for the Steelers would be if the edge rushers took over the game and they literally scored 2 touchdowns. And now you're facing the Steelers. You have more injuries to the Browns offensive line. They're dealing with a lot of stuff right now. You're dealing with a rookie quarterback, 5th-round draft pick, Deshaun Watson, the guy that you paid. He gave the Steelers lots of turnovers in that game. This just seems like a very tall task to be asking of a rookie quarterback in short order, whereas P.J. Walker, he's been brought up in shorter with less notice before, and he's been an NFL quarterback. I don't fully understand that switch there, other than saying, hey, maybe they feel like DTR can be part of the future if they make him the starter and give him a chance to finish out the season.
And I have to agree on that, because it's within common sense. It's all about stability, right, and consistency. At first, and even though there were still worries within Walker's playing, you saw him building his chemistry with the receiving of this team. It was nearly day and night between his performance versus San Francisco, when she throws 2 critical, pivotal interceptions, one of them coming with under 5 minutes left in the game, versus his performance versus Seattle, in which he completes just around 48% of his passes for 248 yards and a touchdown. Even though he had the couple of picks, it was really night and day between how they operated. And on top of this, this is something that should be mentioned more as well, they finally stuck to their strengths with Walker in that game. They stuck to their short pass. A lot of those passes that you saw that became larger gains, whether it was Pierre Strong in his 40-yard reception or Amari Cooper or David Njoku taking it down, they started off as short passes, no more than 12-yard passes, and that was the strength that helped them propel. However, I do have my questions as well, so why they're not going to him exactly, but I think it all pertains to the background, as you said, of him being a 5th rounder, them wanting to keep his confidence up and saying, hey, we're not throwing you, to the background. We're not throwing you in the shadows. You're right here with us. And so that's why I say within the next few weeks, there's going to be a battle between him and Walker and whoever else may come up in the quarterback depth. I mean, who knows? He might call up Bernie Kosar for all we know. You just don't know what's going to happen next week.
Bernie Kosar, that'd be a wild time. The Browns quarterback situation is crazy, but we also got to talk about the rest of the team here, because I think the one thing that works in the Browns' favor is this is a team that, if everyone else is healthy, you have one of the better offensive lines in the league. Your running game has still been working even without Nick Chubb. You got a couple playmakers still in the offense, David Njoku, Amari Cooper, and your defense still gets after it. You got Myles Garrett coming off the edge. You've had Darius Smith, you've had Dalvin Tomlinson, you've had Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome. They've had playmakers. And that defense has been one of the best in the NFL. I just think it could be very interesting to see if the Browns play that style of football. If they try to play a slower game that fits right into the pace the Steelers have loved to play all season long. We'll talk about that matchup here on the other side of the break here on the North Shore Drive podcast. It's the Acrisure Fan Advantage. And a reminder to you all, you can get the Acrisure Fan Advantage every week. On Fridays, we answer your burning question that you've submitted to us with Steelers insider Brian Batko. And then the day before the game each week where the Steelers play, you get an in-depth conversation with an opponent expert. This week, it's Irie Harris from Cleveland.com, who covers the Cleveland Browns every single day. So tune in every Friday and the day before the Steelers game. And if you want to submit your questions, go to acrisure.com/Fan Advantage for more information and to submit your questions today on the Acrisure Fan Advantage, brought to you with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Back here on the North Shore Drive podcast, it's the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, bringing you the Acrisure Fan Advantage, where we get you insight into the Steelers' opponent each week. Irie, let's talk about the rest of the Browns team here, because this is still a team that they've won a lot of their games this season. They're 6-3, just like the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they've done it without stellar quarterback play through most of them. Their win against the Ravens just last week might be the biggest example of really good quarterback play that they've had all year. But there's been games where Deshaun Watson's been hurt and P.J. Walker stepped in, and they still found ways to win. What is the confidence level of this team to be able to pick up their quarterback, regardless if it's DTR or PJ Walker or Joe Flacco even?
I would have to say the confidence level is much higher than people expect. And this maybe is not the best analogy, and definitely not the way in which I'm trying to imply and use it. But the injury, as we saw when we were there, it happened a couple of days after the last time we spoke. The season-ending injury to Nick Chubb, so suddenly in that game versus Pittsburgh, in a way unintentionally prepared them for this with Deshaun Watson. Nick Chubb was the motor, the engine for this offense. So that pertained more to them having to figure out how do we fill that void. And they've been able to do that even without much good play at quarterback. However, now with Watson now, after what seemed to be his breakout, his best game and most important game at that as a Brown on Sunday versus Baltimore. Even then, I still get the feeling that the confidence level is very high. Even for Kevin Stefanski speaking on Wednesday, even though Andrew Berry has set the tone, speaking first early in the morning and stuff, Kevin Stefanski, to me personally, didn't seem as tight or as stressful within his facial expressions, just within his body language. He was just like, yeah, it's out, it sucks, but we got Pittsburgh to look forward to. And I know these are the cliche things that a coach would say, but just within my personal sense when watching and speaking, he seems ready, and this team seems ready to contend and show that they're still there. I mean, it was just such a statement win and such confidence from Baltimore that they are looking to knock off the heads. And I know we'll get to that, but knock off the heads of those wearing any black and yellow.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I want to also talk about what this Browns offensive line has endured because they have multiple guys on injured reserve now. They're looking to hold it. And last time it was the Steelers edge rushers that again destroyed the game. TJ Watt getting a sack, recovered a fumble that was caused by Alex Highsmith for a touchdown. Alex Highsmith getting a pick six along with multiple sacks. It was a really dominant performance when we saw those edge rushers. And now you're dealing with a Steelers defense that's gotten sharper. Keanu Benton has emerged as a rookie in the middle. Cam Hayward has come back from injury. Those guys have gotten better. Joey Porter Jr. is in the secondary. That's really helped them out. Minkah Fitzpatrick might not play. We're still waiting. Actually, we're recording this on Friday, so we haven't seen the final injury report for the Steelers. But it's been reported that he'll be a game time decision. But even without him, you still got all these other facets here while the Browns offensive line has dealt with injuries. Can you tell us what's the state of that and who we should expect to see across the board there?
Yeah, well, at the moment, rookie DeJuan Jones is still questionable right now. A game time decision could be possible, or a decision could be made later today when Kevin Stefanski speaks. That offensive line is running quite thin. I mean, even just seeing Michael Dunn shading the locker room, I'm just thinking, man, like who else is gonna they're gonna have to, get one of the wide receivers at some point, or practice squad guys to come out and line up for them. But I do have to give them props because even in their time right now with them running thin and waiting for Jedrick Wills Jr., hopefully at some point to return during the season, they've still been able to make it work. There was worries of that when they played Baltimore, and yet they still go out and produce a type of, play with the very big push at the end of the game, also led by James Hudson at that. So that's somebody to look forward to. But honestly, the level of the talent of the Steelers defensive line, it doesn't matter who is at O-line for the Browns. It's really the Steelers D-line that they have to watch out for. They can bring on a Hall of Fame offensive lineman. They still have to watch out for TJ Watt and Hayward coming around the edge.
Yeah, but both those guys are going to be a problem. And again, Keanu Benton, his presence in the middle has really boosted this defensive front because before they were kind of trying to figure out how do they replace Cam Hayward. Now Cam Hayward's back. He's playing. He's playing well. He's still getting back to 100%. I think, in my opinion, he still hasn't had this dominant game yet. But Keanu Benton has looked very much like the rookie that they thought they were getting when they picked him in the second round of the draft. And again, if you look behind them, Joey Porter Jr., what he's done, he's put himself in defensive rookie of the year conversations with how well he's played in coverage. He already has an interception of Lamar Jackson, and he has one of the better passer ratings allowed to quarterbacks when he's been targeted this year, not just among rookies, but among all NFL cornerbacks. So this is a challenge for them. What do you think the Browns are going to try to do to try to make things easier for their quarterback, offensively speaking?
Yeah, well, the two things that I said they not only should think about doing, but that I think they really should do is, for one, within the quarterback play, do not try to go for any deep passes, especially on the sixth play of the game. There was no need for a quick screen pass because the whole league knows that is your favorite play within your first offensive series. Thirdly, always stay within a short game. Let that grow to anything bigger, and also keep a balanced attack. The win versus San Francisco is always a prime example for me to bring up because the Browns ran a total of 68 plays. 34 were run plays, 34 were pass plays. The run game is the bread and butter for this team. And the Steelers right now, they're giving up, I want to say, the 8th most rushing yards per game. With the Steelers defense giving up the 8th most per game at just around 131.2. Who's to say that the three-man committee of Jerome Ford, Kareem Hunt, and Pierre Strong Jr. cannot fill that void and be able to eclipse that number or more? They've been putting up nearly double the number of yards that some run defenses have been limiting to this season right now. So I say the run game being the bread and butter and allowing the quarterback to grow his confidence but still stay within the short game will work for them.
I feel you on that. I think part of what the Steelers have to watch out for, because the Steelers, as much as the Browns injuries are a story here, the Steelers are dealing with injuries as well. Minkah Fitzpatrick's out for is looking like he might not play. We were still a game time decision. Literally, as we're recording this, the Steelers are practicing on Friday. Brian Batko reporting that Minkah Fitzpatrick not with the safeties, during as he's seeing warmups begin there. So there's that. Going against these, but the Steelers also have lost in back-to-back weeks. There's two of their three starting off-ball linebackers, and that now leaves Landon Roberts with potential combination of either Mark Robinson or Michael Walker. Robinson, a 7th-round draft pick from last year, who has looked inspiring at times with the way that he can bring hits in the run game, but hasn't been the most the most composed, because he's still figuring out how to play line. He played running back for a time in college, so he's had to learn a bit. And then Michael Walker, who they brought in to be on the practice squad, did have 100 tackles last season, but wasn't exactly a highly sought after player this year. So now the Steelers defense, they have to watch out for the things that I think a good offense could try to coordinate. Steelers fans will remember when they faced the Texans earlier this year. The Texans had a lot of backup offensive linemen, and granted, it was C.J. Stroud, and C.J. Stroud's playing at an amazing level this year. But their game plan was to either C.J. Stroud gets the ball out late, or gets the ball out quick, or if he has to hold on to the ball, they max protect and give him simple reads for him to go through. And they called a lot of screens and a lot of plays that forced the edge rushers to not be the concern for the Steelers, but the interior defenders, whether it's the interior defensive linemen or the linebackers, or just making sure that other guys on the defense were disciplined. That's where I think the Browns offense can be the most dangerous if we're talking about this game. If Kevin Stefanski and that offense can dial up some plays that get screen passes, that get more looks to kind of counter the Steelers and neutralize the pass rush, that could be the path that maybe not gets them a whole lot of points, but just enough to make this to put them in the conversation when we get to the fourth quarter. And it's like, how, and everyone's looking around, how is this rookie quarterback scored this many points on just a week's notice?
I agree. So, I think you hit the nail. I think you hit the nail on the run right there regarding the simple reads if needed. And there's more than enough times in which Njoku should be the primary target. I feel coming across the middle, which he's done multiple times, has gotten better per the week. I do not, and I think it should also work within the same regarding Elijah Moore. It's going to be a very balanced attack. I think it should be for this offense to be able to flourish. But yes, I do agree this can be dangerous for the Steelers defense.
It is a lot to still talk about here. We're going to break down how we think this game plays out right here on the North Shore Drive podcast. It's the Acrisure Fan Advantage. Stick with us. We still have a lot to discuss. Back here on the North Shore Drive podcast, it's the Acrisure Fan Advantage, where all season long we're getting you insights from opponent experts and answer your burning questions here on this show as the Steelers get ready to take on their opponents each week. This week, it's the Cleveland Browns, the rematch, both teams 6-3. And Irie, huge stuff going on right now. Not just Deshaun Watson, Joe Burrow's injury on Thursday Night Football. Everyone's wondering what's his hand or wrist, whatever his injury is, what's going on there. The Bengals have to play the Steelers next week. If he can't go, and he does have 10 days to recover, but if he can't go and the Bengals were to lose there, you're talking about the Bengals being 5-6 when everyone thought they were going to be the team running away with the division. The Ravens are the team now sitting at the top of the division, 8-2 right now. But both of these Steelers and Browns teams are in that race. The Browns have now beaten the Ravens. The Steelers also beat the Ravens. So this is very much still a division up for grabs to be won right now. And also the other, whoever loses this upcoming game Sunday, you don't want to be, be battling it out with a Bengals team to try to avoid last place, because there's still the potential that, all three teams make the playoffs. But the AFC as a whole conference right now, a lot of teams are jostling for that last playoff spot. You got the Bills who are in that conversation. The Texans with CJ Stroud are in that conversation. So really, it looks like whoever finishes second, maybe even third in the division right now, could be good spots to make the playoffs as long as the division holds itself together the way it has. That's why I think there's a big emphasis on this week's game, because the winner advances to 7-3. I think both the Steelers and the Browns have favorable schedules compared to that of the Ravens and the Bengals. And if either one of them get hot after a win like this, you could see a potential division winner coming out of this game.
I definitely agree. I mean, there's a reason why people have recently said within this week that AFC North is the best division in football, right? Prior to Joe Burrow's injury, a lot of spectators were thinking there was a possibility in all four teams making the playoffs. Now with the Bengals, that's a little bit on the edge. The Ravens right now are still at the top. However, there is a possibility of whoever wins this game between Pittsburgh and Cleveland on Sunday could even somehow somebody take over the division in their own reign. And yes, their remaining schedule is a little bit favorable, especially for the Browns. They play Pittsburgh Sunday, and then they have Cincinnati for the last game of the season. Those 6 games in between, I respectfully think the defense could win some of those games alone.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the rest of the Browns' schedules. After they play the Steelers, they're at the Broncos, at the Rams, but they play the Jaguars. That's not an easy game. You play the Bears. You got C.J. Stroud and the Texans in Houston. That could be tough. The Jets are a tough defense as well after that. And then you play the Bengals at the end of the season. But you look at that schedule, Broncos, Rams, Bears, and if you tacked on the Steelers win, that's 4 wins. That's 10 wins right there. And that's even if they lose every one of those other games, the Browns that 10 wins might get you into the playoffs this year. Whereas the Steelers, on the flip side, they're in a similar spot. Let's say they win this game. They go 7-3. You have the Bengals next week. We got to see if Joe Burrow plays. Let's take the Bengals out of that conversation. Let's say they're 7-3 and they lose to the Bengals. They're 7-4. They get the Cardinals, Patriots, and Colts right after that, and the Seahawks as well later in the year. That's 4 wins on top of that. That's 11 wins right there if you look at that. And again, that's not even counting if Joe Burrow's hurt and he couldn't grip a football on Thursday night. So both of these teams in positions where if you look at the Ravens, sure, after this game they play the Chargers next week, and that's not too big of a challenge. But their home stretch is at the Jaguars, at the Niners, home against the Dolphins, home against the Steelers. That is a gauntlet to end the season with 4 straight games. The Bengals, no easier flights there because after they play the Steelers with or without Joe Burrow, they have to go to Jacksonville. That'll be a tough game. The Vikings have been upstarts this year. They play them, and then they finish their season at the Steelers, at the Chiefs, and then playing the Browns at home. And we all know the Browns have been kryptonite for the Bengals, even in their good years. So this to me is again a sign that, like, hey, if the Ravens or the Bengals, well, the Ravens are, the Bengals have already stumbled. They're at 5-5. They need to fight to get back in it. But if the Ravens stumble, one of these AFC North teams in Pittsburgh or Cleveland could have a shot at taking away the AFC North crown and being in that conversation. So that being said, let's get into this matchup. What is the biggest matchup that you're looking for you think will change this game? And give us your final score prediction for how you see this playing out.
All right, so I'm trying to think. What did I say the last time? Whatever it was probably wrong because it didn't work out. So I want to adjust and learn from that this time. The biggest thing I'm going to say, of course, is the Cleveland's front line. I say this not only because the defense has been terrific, but also because ever since that game the last time between the Browns and Steelers, in which I wrote about it for those that would like to look at a vast series about it, in which I said that Myles Garrett saw a Defensive Player of the Year-esque performance from T.J. Watt that night. Myles Garrett has turned up ever since, and I had even a bad game ever since. He's set the tone in a way we have not seen prior. When the rest of his defensive unit, his front line, are not delivering the way they would, he's the one that sets the tone and says, I got us, until they catch up. So that's the biggest equation that I see. I don't really see both offenses going out for 30 points as they were on Sunday. I see it more so being another defensive slugfest in which the second half, especially their quarter, saying, all right, let's make sure we have a completion on right so we don't allow another deep throw as Pickett did to pick us down in the last game. So I see it within that Cleveland front line being within the Browns winning the game. And within my final prediction, I do have the Browns winning. I actually have it a little bit lower right now. Both teams under 20 points. My score at the moment is Browns 17, Steelers 10.
Browns 17, Steelers 10. That's definitely the low scoring affair that both teams probably want in this game. The Browns don't want this game to get out of hand with a rookie quarterback. They want to keep this at a slow pace, but that's also the pace the Steelers have played at this year. And they have won every one-score contest they have been in this season. You have to think at some point that's going to break against the Steelers. So I do agree that that's going to be the pace of this game. I think the biggest key for this game is actually on the other side of the ball. I think the Steelers' rushing offense that has really come on the past couple of weeks. We've seen more and more of them running the football well. They eclipsed 200 yards rushing for the first time this season. Their offensive line has really started to figure things out. And if that offense comes out and is able to move the ball, and not 200 yards, it's a lot to ask against the Browns defense, but if they can run the ball and show and give Kenny Pickett some space to work with there, that could be the key here, because if you run the ball on the Browns right now with the way that they're constituted, that could break into the one thing the Browns cannot allow to happen. Broderick Jones has been playing very well. He's been starting for the Steelers on the offensive line. The Steelers' offensive line as a whole seems like they're more in tune with what the Steelers are calling. Isaac Seumalo has looked like the guy that they picked up from the Eagles that they wanted to see. He's been getting off the ball. James Daniels has been playing pretty strong, and that's allowed Dan Moore Jr. and Mason Cole to kind of just fit in with these guys stepping up in the way that the Steelers are playing right now. And again, you're talking about a 1-2 punch. Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren, that's looking like one of the better 1-2 punches at running back in the NFL right now. If that group is able to run the ball and, not 200 yards, but if they get like 150 plus, and they're moving the chains, they're giving Kenny Pickett space, they're keeping the Steelers ahead of the chains, that could be the difference maker here. And if you do that to a team, if they did that to the Browns with Deshaun Watson, the way he played last week, I'd still say that that's not enough to beat the Browns. But I think with the way they're constituted right now, that could be enough to put pressure on the rookie quarterback to come in, have to make some really tough plays against the defense that's been praying at being able to create turnovers. Right now, the Steelers defense is the number 1 turnover creating defense in the NFL. And on the flip side, they're the 3rd best team at protecting the football. I think that's where, if you're a rookie quarterback team, if you're looking to play like that, you have to be a team that protects the football at a very high rate. You have to be a team that wins those turnover battles. And right now, the Browns rank dead last in protecting the football. They've given up the most turnovers in this year. They're number 8 as far as producing turnovers, but I think that's where the Steelers have an advantage here. I'm going to have the Steelers winning 22-13 in a tough game that goes down late. But I think that Dorian Thompson-Robinson, he's asked to do a lot. He eventually commits some turnovers that allows the Steelers to take over. And I think this game, the way that this is going to be, that the Browns are going to try to play it, it's going to fit right into the mold that the Steelers want when they play football games.
All right. I like it. Understandable. I do instill my confidence within the Browns run defense. They're allowing just over 91 rushing yards a game. They kept the Steelers running game to 55.
Yeah, they crushed them last time.
They crushed them. And also, I mean, even within that second half, like there were opportunities created by that Browns defense, in which I want to say it was maybe 4 or 5 straight series of which it ended in a punt. So I still see that same thing happening. Now on the flip side, yes, ball security is a very, very big need for this Browns offense, because it's still a team, even when they'll be able to win, they still have total more than enough turnovers this season. So ball security and run defense are the big 2 parts within their game plan that have to be looked upon. And hopefully they do well on the flip, and then they come out with the win.
We'll see how it plays out. They're in Cleveland, 1 p.m. Sunday. It's going to be an exciting time. Irie, thanks so much for joining us from Cleveland.com. We appreciate you, and we appreciate you all for joining us here on the Acrisure Fan Advantage from the North Shore Drive podcast. I've been your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Read all of our work at Post-Gazette.com. Our whole team will be there. Ray Fittipaldo, Brian Batko, Jerry Dulac will be there. We'll have our post-game show with Paul Zeiss and Adam Bittner right here on the show, on the podcast network, whether you listen to us on your favorite podcasting app or watch us on YouTube. And then, of course, Ray Fittipaldo and I will have our Monday morning episode of the North Shore Drive podcast, breaking down what happened in this game. We'll see you right here on the North Shore Drive podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all the sports coverage from the Post-Gazette that we have to offer, visit post-gazette.com.